Today, we're unpacking a deeply fascinating, yet highly complex topic. We're diving into how the deep roots of the 1992 to 1995 Bosnian War still physically and psychologically divide the country's citizens today. Even decades after the conflict officially ended, the legacy of that war is just etched into the daily lives, the physical spaces, and the most intimate relationships of the people living there. So we're going to look directly at the evidence, using the very words and experiences of Bosnian citizens themselves to try and understand a society that is still striving to heal. Let's get right into it. Okay, picture this. Imagine a physical fence, complete with concrete pillars, erected right in the middle of a schoolyard. It's literally separating children based entirely on their families' backgrounds. A local woman named Amela, who actually attended this school in the center of Travnik about 17 years ago, notes that this fence was put up right after the war to keep conflicting parties apart. And for the students today, well, this fence is a daily, towering symbol of disunion. It makes the kids feel like the students on the other side either think they're better than them, or maybe that they're just scared of them.
Section 1. A divided school.
So, for these students, their immediate reality is that they actually share a single building, but their day-to-day lives and resources completely partitioned by that physical fence. On the left side, the building is just gray, unrenovated, and this is where children from Muslim families attend classes. But then on the right side, the school is beautifully refurbished, funded directly by the church, and that's where children from Catholic families go to learn. So they're quite literally side by side, yet worlds apart. And, the separation isn't just physical. As Muslim student Yasmin points out, while there's only one history, the curriculum itself actually changes depending on which side of the fence a student sits on. The state sets the curricula, sure, but each group learns a totally different interpretation of the exact same war. For example, on the Catholic side, students are taught the Croatian view of history. As another student, Gabriela, explains, everyone wants to tell their own version of the past. It makes it incredibly difficult to agree on a single shared reality. Section 2. 3 groups, 3 histories. To really understand this, we have to look at how the country is primarily composed of 3 distinct ethnic groups, heavily defined by their religious affiliations. First, we have the Bosniaks, who are predominantly Muslim. Then, the Bosnian Croats, predominantly Catholic. And finally, the Bosnian Serbs, who are predominantly Orthodox. These groups tend to live in different neighborhoods, and every single one heavily strives to promote its own version of history. Religion is the primary divider here. It really acts as the defining line between these 3 ethnicities. Moving forward is, as you might guess, immensely difficult. As one local points out, there has never been a Willy Brandt figure for Bosnia. That's referring to the former German chancellor who famously dropped to his knees to apologize for Nazi crimes. But without a unified moment of national reconciliation like that, or a shared apology where someone actually steps up and takes the blame, the past remains completely unconfronted. Everyone feels like a victim, but at the same time acknowledges they're also perpetrators. And that just leaves these historical grievances firmly entrenched in modern life.
Section 3. The scars of war.
Let's look back at Amela, who we mentioned earlier, because tracking her childhood displacement really shows how the war's chaos violently upended ordinary lives. Just take a second and imagine being 8 years old, having your entire world turned upside down overnight. Back in 1992, her family fled their legally owned home in Travnik for Germany. When they finally returned in 1997, hoping to reclaim their house, they found squatters living there. Actually, a man came out of their own house with a gun, pointed it directly at her father, and threatened to shoot them if they didn't leave immediately. Now, they did eventually receive financial compensation, but man, this trauma of that sudden, violent dispossession, it left a lasting mark on her family. And then we have the incredibly stark perspective of Mevludin. He's a Muslim veteran who joined the fighting when he was just 16 years old. During the war, he remembers drinking coffee with neighbors during ceasefires, only for everyone to pick up their guns and take sides again the second the fighting resumed. His words remind us of the brutal, inescapable reality of neighbors turning deadly weapons against one another. It wasn't a war of their own making, it was driven by politicians, but ordinary folks were the ones forced into these kill-or-be-killed situations. So, this leads us to a deeply intimate question. We've seen the schoolyards, we've gone over the historical context, and we've talked about the trauma of the veterans. But how does a history of such profound neighbor-on-neighbor violence impact matters of the heart today?
Section 4. Love across the divide.
You see, there's been a drastic, almost unbelievable cultural shift since the war. Before the conflict, mixed marriages in Bosnia were completely normal. In fact, people rarely even paid attention to whether someone had a Croatian or a Serbian name. It just didn't matter. But in post-war Bosnia, mixed couples are incredibly rare. They face intense societal fear. Specifically, the fear that if conflict ever flares up again, they'll be forced to choose sides. Put yourself in their shoes for a minute.
Imagine having to completely hide the person you love, just to avoid losing the trust of your family.
Let's bring it back to Mevludin, the Muslim veteran. Shortly after the war, he actually married a Serbian Orthodox woman. Now, here's the wild part. It turns out his new Serbian father-in-law had fought on the opposing side during the conflict. The two men had actually shot at each other in combat. Today, they maintain complete radio silence. Mevludin has only seen the man once. It's a modern cautionary reality, and it's exactly why today's youth, like a Catholic girl mentioned by the student Gabriella, have to hide their relationships. She had an 8-month relationship with a Muslim boy. They don't hide because they don't love each other. They hide because they're terrified of what their families and society will say.
Section 5. The Next Generation.
There's a really profound irony here. Remember Amela from the beginning, the woman who absolutely despises the physical fence at her old school and wishes religion was just a private matter? Well, when asked what she would do if her own 5-year-old son, Ferris, wanted to marry a Catholic woman in the future, she admits she would strictly forbid it. She fears the inevitable conflicts over cultural values and religious traditions, pointing specifically to the question of whether their future children would be baptized. She essentially wants to protect him from the societal problems that come with a mixed marriage.
So, the ultimate takeaway for our explainer today is this. The physical fences, like the concrete and wire running through the schoolyard in Travnik, are highly visible targets for criticism. Everyone agrees they're ugly symbols of division. But the invisible walls, the ones built and maintained within the private lives and minds of the citizens, the ones that dictate who you can love and who you can marry, those are far, far stronger. The war changed people fundamentally, deeply embedding these walls right into the culture.
I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder. Will love ever transcend Bosnia's ethnic divisions, or are these invisible walls permanently cemented into the foundation of the country's future? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope these firsthand accounts have helped you understand the everyday complexities of a society striving to heal. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.